Okay, this next tutorial is going to be very cool. We'll be looking at adding the jsHarmony CMS to an existing Laravel application, but this time actually making one of the interior application pages editable. In this case, we'll add an editable section to the dashboard. So if you would like to follow along with the instructions, you can go to the resources section of jsHarmonyCMS.com, go to integrations, PHP, Laravel, and here in the integration methods, we're doing the standalone integration. Standalone is adding the CMS to a standalone page on the site. And view integration tutorial. This gives you the step-by-step tutorial of how to do this. We're going to go through the whole process from even creating the site to begin with. But if you already have an existing site dedicated to a particular application, then you wouldn't need to follow these initial steps of creating the site and setting up the deployment target. So what we're going to do, we go to the inside of the CMS. I'm going to go to the Sites tab and add a new site for our Laravel application. Just call it Laravel app. Hit save, and now I'll add a deployment target. This is where our files will actually get published. We'll call it dev. For the deployment type, I'm going to pick jsHarmony CMS deployment host. Within our Laravel app, first I'll need to go to the public folder and create a folder where our content files from the CMS will get published. So that'll be in public/content. And now back in our deployment target, we can fire up a deployment host within that content folder to be a recipient of the files. What the deployment host does is it lets the CMS publish to local dev environments. Because normally you would need to use FTPS, SFTP, or Git to publish the CMS files. But using the CMS deployment host, you can have the local dev environment hook up into the CMS and serve as an endpoint for the deployment. So you would, to get this initially installed on your machine, you would install Node.js. And then you would, to install this, you do npm install jsHarmony CMS host -g. The -g is the global flag, so it'll be installed for your entire system. But since I already have it installed, I'm just going to type jsHarmony CMS host, put in the URL of the CMS, and the second parameter is the folder where I want the content files published. In this case, I'm using dot for the current folder. It's asking for my CMS username and password. I'll do demo jsHarmonyCMS.com, which is my username for the CMS, and my password. And now it's connected to the CMS. When your machine is connected and you hit browse, it'll show up under the available deployment hosts. And I'll click download remote templates via deployment host, so that since my Laravel app is not publicly accessible, I'll need to use the deployment host to serve any remote templates, and then also ignore certificate errors when downloading remote templates, since I'm using a self-signed certificate. My URL prefix is going to be /content, since that's the subfolder under the public folder where I'm publishing the content. And for page override prefix, I'm going to hit /. This is so that the files will be virtualized to look like they're out of the root folder. You don't really need this when you're doing the standalone. This is more for the router with static pages or router with page objects. But just to make it reusable for those, I'll go ahead and do that. So at this point, I can hit save. And the next step is in my Laravel app, I need to install the jsHarmony CMS SDK. So here I'm going to use Composer to install that. right, great. It's installed. And now in the Laravel app, in the config app.php file, we'll add the CMS config. So I'm going to config app.php, and at the bottom of this file, I'll add a new section for the CMS configuration items. And back in my deployment target, under integration code, if I go to PHP router, or actually PHP standalone, I can pull the config parameters from the integration code. I'll just copy that and paste it here into the config file. One thing I'll want to do is update this path. This is going to be the path to the config files from the document root, which the document root is the public folder, so the path to the config files would be just /content to resolve to public /content. So now, next step here, I need to initialize the CMS router in the service provider. So I'll go to app provider, providers, app service provider, add the use statement on top, and then here, initialize the CMS router on startup. And this is, again, using those configuration settings we just defined in the app.php file. Okay, so now in the next step, we're going to add the CMS content to the actual page. So before we do that, back in my site, I'm going to, first I need to check out the site. So I'm checking out that Laravel app. I'm creating a revision to work out of. I'll just call it initial. And then here, I'm going to add a page for, I'm going to actually link that standalone page into the CMS. So here, I'll take the URL template, I'll pick standalone, paste the template URL. So this would be the URL to the standalone page. In our case, we're editing the home page, so that's why I'm just having the root URL here. And we are going to make the page URL, instead of just default, let's call it dashboard/index, just to give it a better name. So now, here in our Laravel app, if we actually go back to our page here, this is rendered using Livewire. So there's two parts to this. I'm going to have to pass the CMS page object to the view renderer, and then inside of the actual template, I'm going to have to render the elements as HTML. So let's open up that Livewire page here. Here I'm using that URL I just defined in the CMS, so /dashboard. And I'll need to add the use statement on top so that this class will resolve. There we go, and now the CMS content will get passed to that dashboard. And now inside of the actual render template, up here, I will add the editor script. And I'll also add a content area. That will be editable. So now here, back in the CMS, I double click on this. So now I can go in, click up top, and start adding content. One thing you notice, this area was a little difficult to find, so I'm going to add some default content in there to make it easier to work with. So I'll do script type equals text CMS page config. This is a CMS page config. Where I can put in a default value for the content area. Yeah, looks good. So now if I go back to edit it again, there we go. Now it defaults to page content. But again, I can go in here, I can add text, I can add images, web snippets, components, whatever elements that you have configured in your site. So now that that's set up, I'm going to save it. Let's publish. And when we view it on the actual site, now we have our CMS content injected right into the page.